So thank you for that. Thank you all who contributed to this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept and reward you in the best of both worlds. And also, special thanks to IMSA Learning and Development Department for creating this event. We can also view this on event.imsa.us. So moving on to the agenda of today's event, we are going to be talking about our youth and young adult. This is essentially more of just a get together sort of thing about Suhbah and Brotherhood and Sisterhood. So starting off, we have an opening for a Quranic recitation. Brother Yusuf Rashid, are you ready for that?
Yeah, inshallah, I think I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. So Yusuf is an 18-year-old sophomore from the University of Washington, Seattle, and I'll hand it over to you now.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون ولا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا وما يلقاها إلا ذو حظ عظيم وإما ينزغنك من الشيطان نزغ فاستعذ بالله إنه هو السميع العليم إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون صدق الله العظيم.
Well, thank you very much, Yusuf, for the recitation. I'd also like to start off by introducing each of our esteemed panelists with us today and thank them all for participating and sharing with us. So starting off with Ustad Ahmad Onis Kashidi from Los Angeles, a recent graduate from Al-Azhar in Cairo with a BA in Islamic law. Also with us is Brother Ifdal Yusuf, who graduated from University of Texas, Arlington with a BA in clinical psychology. He has also graduated from Baina Institute, where he studied Arabic under the guidance of Ustad Nu'man Ali Khan and Ustad Jamal. Ifdal became a Hafid at a very young age of 14 years old under the guidance of his teacher Qari Abdul Karim Adubush, and Ifdal currently regularly leads Tarawih prayers during Ramadan in masjids throughout the United States, and he is currently the youth director at the Muslim community of Charlotte in North Carolina. Also with us is Shifa Shah, who grew up between Canada, Indonesia, and the States. She has a certificate for teaching Quranic Arabic grammar. She currently lives in Flint, Michigan with her husband and her son and enjoys comic books, arts and crafts, and is currently getting into building houses of cards. So yeah, I think now I'd like to take it on to each of the panelists and if they would like to share their thoughts and experience surrounding community, and then particularly given our current situation living within COVID-19. So yeah, I'll just hand it off to whichever one of our panelists would like to speak first.
Shifa, if you want to go ahead and start, Bismillah.
I think it's very timely that we discuss brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam. There definitely has been a palpable lack of like companionship in my life now that we've all been on lockdown for a while. Alhamdulillah, I've been seeing people take advantage of technology in order to fill that void. Just like with this particular session, mashallah, there's so much, so much technology involved. In particular, when like a day before Ramadan started, I was talking with my sister, and she was sharing that she and some girls her age were going to, some girls related to IMSA, mashallah, we're going to read Quran together every day, try to do a juz a day. And I knew that if I didn't find something similar at that exact moment, that I would never look for it, and I would just like be really lazy about it. So I asked her if I could join them, and mashallah, like the very first second I entered the Zoom link, the sister who was hosting, her name is Shafi. She's from Seattle, mashallah. I mean, she was so sweet and so welcoming, and I don't think she knew anything about me. She just knew that I was Hanan's sister, and she was so happy to see me, and I was so happy to see her. I think the fact that, and it was a lot of girls, mashallah, and we all came together specifically to read Quran. I don't know anything about Shafi, but I do know that she's like super nice, mashallah, and also that like reading Quran is important to her. Having that in common to bring us together, it means so much to me. I think being able to connect with people who share the same values that I do, whether it's reading Quran or trying to live a healthy life, being able to connect with those who share the same values that I do, it's one of the things that makes life worth living, I guess. I get to do that with small groups, like reading a juz a day, but then also I've been involved, alhamdulillah, with the Muslim Youth of North America, the youth division of ISNA, and they run camps, they run programs, and every time I come to something Minna related, these sisters who like don't know me at all, and I don't know them, but when they see me, they look really, really happy to see me. Even though they come from like completely different walks of life than I do, even though they like have gone through so much more than I have and have done so much more for the world and for their communities than I have, they like appreciate me and like value me so much. And I think it's because we share values. We value uplifting people. We value connecting youth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I think like above all else, it's really because they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they love me for Allah. Then I was at an Eid prayer like 2 years ago, a year ago, in a city that I was in East Lansing, and I hadn't really been there for a very long time. And just seeing this huge auditorium full of people who I don't know all these people. There's like thousands of them in this auditorium. And seeing them come together for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, it was so powerful. It was so moving. to the idea that like I am special to every person there, and they are special to me because of that ilaha illallah. It really moved me. I imagine I've never been to Hajj or Umrah, but I imagine that's how some people might feel when they see like millions of people at Hajj. Um, that like we've all gathered for Labbaik Allah. Like it's incredible and it's so moving. And now that we are on lockdown and we have been for a while, like how do I access Suhbah, brotherhood and sisterhood, the way I might have in the past, when things were a lot easier to get to, like halakas, events, and everything. I guess something, mashallah, that I really appreciated. My husband and his parents and his siblings, now that Ramadan has started, they meet up every day, mashallah, to discuss Surah Al-Insan. So they're all memorizing an ayah a day of Surah Al-Insan and looking at different tafsirs. They kind of come together with some bits and pieces from the tafsir that they're looking at, and like sharing their reflections about the ayah in question. And I think like being able to come together for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter what the setting, no matter in person or online, is always something beautiful. And being able to avail of the resources that we have is so important. There have been a lot of times in my life where I've been in isolation. I've been completely alone for like extended periods of time. And there was really nothing that I could do to come out of that situation. And it was really important for me to realize that there was a reason that I was put in that situation. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided that these factors would come together at this particular point in time for me, and that this is my situation. He could have chosen anything else for me. He could have chosen any other test for me, but in that particular moment in time, that was my test. And my husband was sharing like Surah Al-Insan is a beautiful example of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the human being and knows the human being's like secrets and knows the human being's needs. We're in the month of Ramadan, and he was sharing that um, human beings, like we wouldn't have known without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance that we need taqwa. But Allah told us that we need taqwa, and he told us to fast to inculcate that taqwa. The fact that you're going through whatever test you're going through right now, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly why you need to go through it. That wisdom behind it, that divine wisdom, is something that I need to believe in. And he has definitely given us the tools to overcome whatever hardships that we may face. So yeah, alhamdulillah, that's some of the things that came to mind. Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you so much for sharing, Shifa, especially, given what your husband and his family are doing, that's really cool and a cool way to keep a constant connection despite what we're experiencing. Okay, if any of our other panelists would like to add on.
Brother, I'll go through.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna 'ilman nafi'an ya kareem. It's always good to see everyone here, mashallah. It's good to see people in the time of like social isolation. Alhamdulillah, everyone's doing healthy, looks like it. And we thank Allah for all the blessings that He's given us every day. You know, I was just doing a teen program last night, and you know, it's been so different, the dynamic of like programs with online things going on, and the way that you assess yourself mentally and spiritually, and you know, especially gearing up for Ramadan. And everyone has these expectations of Ramadan being like a time where you get up with your friends and you break iftar together and things like that. But then COVID comes out of nowhere, right? And it just really damps down all your plans. And a lot of people going into Ramadan thinking like, you know, what this Ramadan is going to bring? How am I going to enjoy Ramadan? How am I going to get my spirituality out of Ramadan with no masjid, right? I don't know about you guys, but our mosques here are closed. And I'm pretty sure that's the case for everything, or for every city. But I think it's important for us to realize that we have to start it's important for us to reframe our situation daily, right? That's why we ask God for clarity, right? We ask God for clarity because sometimes what happens to us or what we deem as bad, at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam concludes that anything that happens to a believer is good, right? And I'm pretty sure everyone's been talking about this whole COVID thing, this whole COVID like try to see the benefit, right? But for me, I think it's actually remembering that we have Allah's in control, like Shifa said, that Allah's in control of everything, and that wisdom comes out of all these kind of things. It's just up to us that we have to reframe it in a way, right? Because that's reframing is actually like a technique that I learned that counselors use for their patients. It's like when someone is bogged down or sad by a certain situation, the counselor tells them to reframe or look at the situation in a different way, right? So let's say I don't know, a certain situation, and you look at it a different way, and then instead of trying to see the negative all the time, you see the positive and things like that. So I think that's very important right now that we have to do during COVID. Another thing is that we have to stay connected to God, right? Ramadan obviously is a time that we stay connected to God, but even despite the circumstances we're in, it's a blessing in a time that we have at home, right? I've reconnected with the person I'm staying, like you see the same people every single day, right? You see your family all the time, maybe before, and I'm pretty sure that, since we're all young people here, we go out a lot, we see our friends a lot, right? And the family, sometimes we see them only at times, like once a week, where we see them at home, to be honest, right? But now is a time where we're stuck at home. We see them all the time. We're not stuck at home. We've been blessed to be at home, right? A lot of people now, especially now, because you think about it, there's a lot of Muslim converts out there. And I get this talk all the time. There's a lot of Muslim converts out there with no Muslim friends, no Muslim families, right? No one to turn back to, right? How do you think their Eid goes? How do you think their Ramadan goes and things like that? And now it's just a great opportunity for us to empathize, to sympathize, and actually realize that there are people in that community that feel the same way I'm feeling right now every single day, right? And that's something that's eye-opening. Like how much you miss a community. Well, that's probably when the message comes out, we learn from our mistakes. We learn to include everyone. We learn not to shun someone just because they're really not with the clique. A Muslim brother is a Muslim brother. That's what Brotherhood, Sisterhood is all about. And that's how I'm going to conclude, right? We as a Muslim community in Islam, anything right, nothing goes above La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. If you believe as a Muslim that you're devout on the truth, or you believe in the scripture and the Quran, and that you testify that God is one and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is his last and final messenger, then you're my brother, then you're my sister, right? Where you come from, how you look like, your age, your whatever, it all comes under that, right? I want to go back to those ayahs that our beloved Yusuf read in the beginning. God says that وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبِلِ اللَّهِ. God was talking about, he revealed these verses because the Aus and the Khazraj were two tribes in Arabia at the time. They're fighting, right? They were fighting before Islam came, right? So let's say me and Anis, we're two tribes basically, right? And before Islam, we were enemies, but Islam brought us together, right? So when Islam brought us together, obviously there's that beef from before, right? There's that history. And it just takes one person to bring up, oh, you remember what you did last time, right? Why are you dogging on me right now, right? So that's what happened. And then God, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ heard that these two tribes were fighting. And then Prophet ﷺ said, calm down, right? Remember, you guys are brothers in Islam. I know you guys were enemies before, but everything outside of Islam, it doesn't matter anymore because you guys are bonded by the Tawheed. You guys are bonded by the religion. And that's the strongest type of bonds. So they were about to get at each other's necks with war, basically. But then after that, God sent the ayah, what Yusuf read, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبِلِ اللَّهِ. Like, remember that as Muslims, our main goal as brothers and sisters is to uplift each other and connect each other on that rope of God, right? On the service of God. Connect with each other through God, right? وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا, together. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And don't let your differences divide you guys, because Allah or God is teaching us here that nothing can really divide you guys once that you guys are bonded together by that link of faith, right? Right? And God here is saying that brotherhood and the sisterhood that you have with your brother, with your Muslim brother, with your Muslim sister, that's actually like a gift from God Himself, right? Remember, that's a gift. Don't waste that, right? Don't get in between each other with these petty issues of things like that. Let it go, right? Because right now you're sleeping and you're closing your eyes on something that's so beautiful that transcends beyond this life, right? Allah says in the Quran that there is no brothers and sisters on the day that matters, which is the Yawm al-Qiyamah, except two brothers or sisters, like when they were connected in the path of God, right? Allah says in Surah Zukhruf, Al-akhilla yawma idhin ba'duhum li ba'din adu ila al-muttaqin. Literally, everyone on a day of judgment is going to be all for themselves. I don't care about you. I don't care about me. I don't care. I'm worried about myself. Except who? Except those that were together in the righteous path of God, right? Al-muttaqin. Right, so that's what we have to remember, that this communal feeling as a Muslim community, it doesn't end whether you see each other or not. I'm making dua for you constantly. That's what you can expect from me as my Muslim brother. That's what I can expect from you, from my Muslim brother and sister. Right, so the love goes beyond. Right, and this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls that a gift. Then as Yusuf concluded, innamal mu'minuna ikhwa, which is a great way to conclude. Right, surely the believing brothers and sisters are ikhwa, like they're true brothers and sisters. Right, and something that I thought about, one of my teachers told me that if you want to be that person that remembers people of God, that when someone talks to you, they remember God, right? When you want to be that person, when they see you, they remember God, right? Be that person where you're in the group and you're the reason why people are saying, let's go pray or things like that. You want to be that person. And continuously be good to each other, continuously remember each other, and with the COVID things like that, just remember each other in the prayers, and make dua for each other and check up on each other in these times, inshallah. That's all I got to say. Allahu Akbar.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Atul. That was a really, really moving reminder of just our love for each other beyond the physical connection, and how to continuously remember God through each other and through our own du'as and checking up on one another. That's great. So thank you for that. So lastly, if we could hear from our final panelists on our current situation.
Inshallah. So, Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Praise is due to Allah, and we ask Allah to send His blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Peace and blessings be upon him. So, mashallah, Ramadan is here, and it's really amazing to have like these gatherings that really pump you up. Regardless of, despite of being at social distancing, we're still connected. Allafa bayna qulubikum, right? We're really connected with the hearts together as being believers. And as popped up with the IMSA Learning and Development organization, and they wanted to really have like this sense of community. Like, for example, if for those that have attended Mu'tamar and like all these other programs that they from IMSA's side, they really have the sense, and especially from like the Indonesian kind of community, you see the vibes that they produce, right? In terms of the baba bapa, the ibu, the uncles, the aunties, and so forth. And they really wanted to have something where the young people, the people that are, being of in the US, in the West, and so forth, coming together as well in that kind of sense. When we think about, and especially just coming to the fact of having the title of Suhbah, Suhbah, brother and sisterhood. Suhbah itself, it literally translates to companionship, to friendship, right? And Suhbah, when it's described by how and what Suhbah is, what companionship is, it's described as organic love, true love, pure intimacy and friendship, right? And then so like how do you conjure that? How do you picture that kind of true friendship, that true love with one another, right? So like we have, for example, the example of Abu Hurairah, right, where he was told about what is true friendship. True friendship is something where you have trust with each other that I could just take anything from your wallet and you'd be good with that. And just think about like who would who would be there to just like give free money to someone that might know or you might not know, right? That's like a statement. That's like a standard to what friendship is up there, right? To that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. And especially like with the Indonesian Muslim community that we have our own, I guess, specific regions around the US, Canada, and so forth. And just adding on to that, where the companion of the Prophet, Abu Bakr Siddiq, where he was told, where he said to the Prophet, Akun fidaka lak. In other words, I'll take a bullet for you.
Oh.
So like, like they were like down with each other. And that's like a sense of what brotherhood and sisterhood kind of is, where like, are we really down with each other? Right. So that's like that kind of standard that they had at the past, where, for example, in the sense of when you're selling something on Amazon or you're selling something on, Craigslist, what was it? Wish? No, OfferUp, where you're selling something, you give the discount to the person that you're selling to because you love them, and that other person that they're trying to buy something from you, that they're trying to add more money onto it because they love you. So it's that reciprocity that we have, and subhanAllah, it's these support systems that we have, these support systems of the community that we have together, regardless of this social distancing of itself. We're brought together. Al-habuna fillah, right? People that love with each other, that the the day of judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah, where it said Yawma yafirru al-mar'u min akhi, right? Where people will be just running left and right, people running from their families, their friends, their brothers, but then at the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, who was a lover of this person, right? And that lover of that person would be the shafa'a, would be the what you call it, would be the intercessor for that person, and just remembering that person. Because you could comment on this, if like about how there's the thing of where a disbeliever would say, "Oh, I was with so and so," and they, where I wish I wasn't with so and so, with fulan, because they brought me into this kind of situation, right? But just having this community itself is one way of just to bring our hearts together, especially during Ramadan, especially during this time where we're doing our best, especially in terms of worship, in terms of getting closer to the Creator, in mending our relationships, and just mending our relationships, just setting that standard up. Are we taking tabs? Are we checking in on people? Are we asking, how are you doing? It's a simple question, but it's really a loaded question as well, right? For the answer itself. So we have to see for ourselves what level of our friendship is to our people that we truly love. In that sense. So inshallah, we ask Allah to really bless this community that we have at the moment. I'm totally reminded how these communities, just thinking about like the Indonesian Muslim community specifically in the US and the West, it's like you could consider it as a minority of sorts, where we have numbers here and there, but like you wouldn't think of Indonesian or anything in like the more Asian American category per se. But then just seeing the ripple effect of what happened in the historical events of South Africa. So when we looked at South Africa, because during my time in Egypt and Azhar, we had many students, had a lot of dudes coming from South Africa, especially from Cape Town. In other words, also known as Cape Malay. So Cape Malay, the history behind that was that 300 years ago, during the times of the Dutch, where South Africa was considered as a prison, right? As how Australia was a prison for the UK. You know, the Dutch had their prisons for the rebellions against the Dutch in Indonesia at that time, 300 years during the occupation of the Dutch. And so those that actually led the rebellion itself were the leaders, were the religious ulama, the scholars, and so forth that led, the rebellions, saying that this is injustice, this is dhulm, right? And so one of them that is still remembered up to today, where was the catalyst of spreading Islam in South Africa itself 300 years ago, was known as Tuan Guru Yusuf al-Makassari. And when we think of al-Makassari, Makassar, right? For those of you that know their origins or their roots come from Makassar themselves, Sheikh Yusuf Makassari, he's in South Africa, being exiled from Indonesia to South Africa. What he spread was the love of Islam, the beauty of Islam. And to today, 300 years later, we still have a thriving Muslim community where it's Cape Malay, right? Where you have, the mix of Zulu and the South Africans and the Malay. So they have these, interestingly enough, Asian features, and spreading the way of how Islam was practiced in Islam. For example, the Shafi'i madhab, where we have the sitting position at the end, right? Where you put your foot over your left foot in that kind of awkward, quote unquote, position. So that's even passed down, the Shafi'i madhab itself. So it's very interesting to see, what we can start up as a community, for the community, by the community, coming from us as well, inshallah. As time goes on, as we go through the trials, as we go through the tribulations that we have, but inshallah, we ask Allah to bless everyone and also to protect everyone, especially those in front lines, keep everyone safe. Allah.
Jazakumullah. That was a very cool reminder of historical impacts of communities and what our love for each other and as our love for Allah can do for a wider region. So that was very cool. Thank you so much. At this point, we can open it up to questions from the audience to our panelists here. Not sure how easy it is to do this. One option is you can obviously just unmute and say what you need to say, but I think an easier option is if you go through the group chat, or you could direct message me. Whichever one works best for everyone. We have a comment from DC that is just thanking us all for doing this and suggests doing this type of program regularly. Not just specifically during a COVID shelter in place and or Ramadan, but moving further as well. So yeah, I guess we'll just wait for questions.
While we wait for questions, Ustad, honestly, Jazakallah khair, and that I had no idea that we have connections like to people who live in South Africa. I know like one South African auntie, mashallah, who's like of Desi descent and stuff. I had no idea that people from Indonesia were shipped.
Oh my God, focus on your work.
Yeah, subhanAllah, just getting in touch with other communities, other peoples, right? Not because like Islam itself, the Prophet was sent rahmatan lil alameen, right, for everyone, right? And then so how that was spread, how the message of Islam spread, many ways. We don't even realize behind the wisdom of how Allah, does His thing, right? And so like, you have one side of South Africa, interestingly enough, the western side, Cape Malay, which is more Malay Indonesian in a sense, where they have the Shafi'i madhab, where they practice it in totality, and holistically speaking, they bring their roots to Yemen as well as how Indonesia. When we think of the way we do our ibadah, we do our way of worship, it's the Shafi'i madhab in the sense, in the school of thought, right? And then, but then the eastern side, interesting enough, from occupation as well, is from the British as well, where the British, they had their time of just sending quote unquote laborers everywhere, including people from the subcontinent. And so you have Johannesburg, Victoria, where you have strong Desi communities that were built up there, right? So you have like Darul Ulooms, the madrasas, or in Indonesian terms, the pondok, right? Pondok pesantren, the Islamic boarding school, and so forth. So these were like the strongholds of, bringing through the beauty of Islam everywhere.
Yeah, I actually have a friend from Johannesburg. He was telling me the history behind like Johannesburg and Cape Town, because he's actually from South Africa. He's in South Africa right now. I spent Ramadan with him, and he was telling me how he has a bunch of friends, and he showed me pictures, and they honestly look like me and you. A little darker, obviously, but it's wild. And
Yeah,
then you just gave me like a history lesson that just was connecting the puzzle pieces over in my mind for like years. So
totally.
it's crazy.
Yeah, subhanAllah. Like from the way they do their, like, how, like, it might be like the gimmicks that the Indonesian community, wherever region you are, have in terms of the bapa bapa, ibu ibu, the uncles,
Yeah.
aunties. They have that kind of like vibe where they're always like together, like do things together. And that's the thing that they have as well with the Cape Malays. They always do things together, and then they have their kind of like, their
Also, like
pengertian, quote unquote.
group
Yeah,
remembrances.
totally.
Yeah.
That's how it is. So
Yeah.
there's that communal kind of benefit in
Yeah.
having the community itself. Right?
hmm
It goes back to the support system, where we see that in the ummah itself, is the support system that we have, and just focusing on what we have at the moment is something that we can totally do. We can totally take in from the community what we have from our resources and just give back.
It's crazy how we come from such a rich lineage, and like we have this kind of inheritance of like guidance and like dawah, and like resilience. Like it's incredible, subhanallah, like all the way in South Africa. um uh Hamka and like his tafsir writing in jail, like that's just from like the Indonesian perspective, but even like kind of Islamic inheritance of like Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, how they were jailed for speaking up and doing what's right, like subhanAllah, and like the amount of like work that they did while they were isolated, like it's incredible, subhanAllah.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this, the historical connections or anything, so it was a really cool lesson to learn, and I'm looking forward to actually probably looking deeper into it. So we did get a question through the chat. How can we educate our non-Muslim friends on what's happening during Ramadan? I had to explain it to someone last night, and it was kind of awkward, but I was proud of doing it. And then they moved on to say that. So I asked if they meant just during COVID and our lack of community, or during Ramadan in general. And the question is both, that she had to discuss how to keep up with her faith, like reading Quran and praying Tarawih at home, despite not being able to leave her house, things of that sort. So I guess, what is your take on explaining to other people who might not really see the depth of the situation?
Sheikhna. Go ahead, Ahmed. Honest.
So, fasting, I guess, the general thing that we hear of, like, when we explain about fasting to other people would be like, oh, so you not even water, right? And then that's like the outer kind of sense of what no, like a more, I guess, surface level understanding of what fasting really is. But then when we look into the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, of where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells about the prescribing of fasting, and then the purpose of it itself. So I feel like we could totally focus on what the purpose of fasting is for, right? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that you may be God conscious. right? And then how do you kind of understand what good consciousness is? What is taqwa itself? Someone, as the example of the Prophet ﷺ narration, where like someone who's going through a thorny bush, and then they're trying their best to just protect their garment, to protect their clothes and whatnot from getting all the thorns. So that's in the sense what taqwa is, right? And so we're trying our best to get ourselves closer to Allah, and through fasting is a way to really, not just to feel the pangs of hunger and thirst, because a narration of the Prophet ﷺ saying that if you've gained hunger and thirst from fasting itself, then you've lost something, right? You're missing the whole point of what fasting is. Interesting enough, where sometimes we're more focused on like the food aspect, the iftar, and whatnot, but it's not really about the food itself. It's more beyond the food, where we're self-controlling ourselves, right? We don't, like, for example, iftar, what is the sunnah for breaking your fast, right? Is it esteller, is it polak, or is it is it like all these good foods and drinks from like the Indos? It's that the example of the Prophet ﷺ, not to say it's bad, but to say that the example that he showed us was like, okay, break with a tamar, a date, or if you don't have that, then water. But then there's like an underlining thing to why, because that wasn't the focus, right? The focus was just to break your fast, to move on and continue on with your ibadah and so forth, right? So I feel like if you really explain like why I'm really, what the true purpose of what fasting is, right? That would just get people like, oh dang, so you're really like, there's like this development, right? The spiritual journey that you're going through in terms of what fasting does, rather than just me, oh, I'm hungry and then like I can eat like at sunset and that's about it. I feel like we have to like really add substance to how we explain in terms of what underlining meanings that we can get from fasting itself and from other acts of prayer when we're explaining to people, inshallah. So hope that can be of benefit in terms of and that's also like that's homework for us as well, right? Like, how much do we know of fasting itself, right? What is the purpose of fasting, right? So on and so forth, right? All these questions that we can self ask. How far are we in the spiritual journey?
I like when honesty is development. I think that's a key word when you're explaining to like people that don't know Ramadan. Because Ramadan, I'm pretty sure people know what fasting is, because I think even non-Muslims fast. Like there's like that fasting that diet people use, or like these fitness guys use, fasting, like intermittent fasting, things like that. But it's like the hadith that Anas quoted, Prophet ﷺ said that if all you gain from fasting is hunger and thirst, then you lost the essence, right? So I think in easier terms, that to just wrap it up, like what the essence is, it's like getting closer to God. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And the avenues or the different acts that we do during Ramadan, like why we increase, why do we read more Quran, why do we pray more prayers, why do we remember why are we more grateful in Ramadan, these kind of those acts just remember or take you closer to God, right? So there's different avenues. Like I was on Twitter the other day. There was like a meme, and then someone was like, praise at home Taraweeh, reads Juz Amma for every rak'ah of Taraweeh. And right, and there was a meme was like, it's not Allah, but it's honest work, right? And look, that's honest work. If that's all you know, then that's what you're going to be rewarded for, right? Allah looks at your effort in this Ramadan, right? Let's say you read one page and you got like, mashallah, Yusuf, like from the beginning, he was reading like 5 pages or 6 pages an hour, right? Allah don't look at amount. It's not, the khairul a'mal adwamuha wa in qalla, right? The best of deeds is the consistent ones. It's not the ones that you do massively and then you forget them. So Ramadan is a time where we get closer to God by developing these good habits that we want to continue after Ramadan. And you want to further that development of your spiritual journey, and just further explore your relationship with God. Ramadan's a perfect time for that.
SubhanAllah. Jazakallah khair, and both of our ustads, mashallah. Like with the Ustad Anas with like the why, and then Ustad Ifdal with like the how of Ramadan. And I really believe that if we can have those two things together, like very strongly, the how and the why, we can become like our ancestors who were shipped off to South Africa and like became the spark point for a nation of believing Muslims who serve Allah and like serve their communities and change the world. Like everything that we see that's wrong in the world, injustice against Native Americans, injustice against our Black communities, injustice against our immigrant communities, people who are trying to come into the country, people who are trying to leave the country. There's so much that's wrong in our hearts and in our minds and in our actions. And the only way that we can spread Islam is if like we inculcate that taqwa in ourselves and it shines. Like if that taqwa is so strong, it shines, and that it's in every action that you do, in every word that you say, it's in every interaction, and that it spreads. That like you can inspire someone else to have taqwa, and that they have their life filled with taqwa now, and then they can inspire someone else, and like a family will inspire multiple families. These families inspire their community. The communities, like if we can light up every single city in the world to be like filled with taqwa, like that's what we're aiming for. Like that's how Islam spread. Like that's how we conquered the world.
Okay, that was a really great cohesive answer from everyone. Honestly, everything just kind of went full circle there. Pretty cool. So another question, probably a little more specific. I have one that says how you each are spending your Ramadans at home, so this person and everyone else can potentially draw inspiration for their own isolated Ramadans.
I'll go ahead. Bismillah. Yeah, for the most part, I guess for like organizers and people that are in charge of, masjids, team communities and so forth, it's tough to really balance that kind of timing between you doing work for the community and doing work for yourself, right? And so like one thing, because you have all these webinars going around, they're really amazing resources. It's funny enough where like COVID-19 is supposed to isolate people and like social distance and everything, but then in the Muslim online presence of like these institutions are coming around and like bringing content for everyone. So there's like this webinar about Ramadan preparedness and so forth by, I think it was Yaqeen or some other one, where one of the instructors, IMSA Tamara Gray, where Sheikha Ansa Tamara Gray of Rabata, she had this thing about, where, it's like where Ramadan, usually we go to the masjid, it's like a more kind of passive kind of thing for congregate, right? For us just joining in to prayers and then listening in onto the lecture and so forth. We really have to make that more of a proactive kind of role in our families. At this, sometimes without the masjid itself, we have to do what we can for the community. What is our role, right? And so one of the things is to actually create, there's like a movement well on online presence where it's like the mini masjid. You create your own kind of space for yourselves, and then you just devote time to even going for the green light where you can do i'tikaf at that spot. Just solidifying your concentration, your focus towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your devotion and worship at that moment, just for like your self kind of upbringing, right? Your development and going with your goals towards being a better person outside of Ramadan as well, right? Bringing that out. Personally speaking, I'm just reading Quran with family members at the moment, and then after Aisha or after a couple of rakas from Tarawih, we do a little bit of just explanations of like some of the just like as what the Shifa said, where we're going through some of the tafsir and whatnot, and it's a really good way to just reconnect, right? That's pretty much it. How like we're trying to reconnect back. It's always full circle. We're going back towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that's one thing I'm going through. Inshallah.
I think because like Anis said, I think a lot of like community masjid or mosque boards and like imams, and everyone is, I wouldn't say scrambling, but they're putting their utmost effort into making sure the community vibe is still there. And like like you said, we have to take from these different resources that are literally being given to us for free, right? like like 10 years ago, this would be a phenomenon. All this Islamic knowledge for absolute free, like that's a god-given like gift, right? And if we're not taking advantage of that, then we really should take advantage of it, because these things are not gonna, like, we shouldn't take advantage for. You have Yaqeen producing like series daily. You have Qalam producing like 5 programs daily. You have like my mosque right now, we're doing programs like daily, right? So there's so much like knowledge out there. It's just for you to pick and choose. Like we have the luxury to do that, pick and choose basically. Well, whoever speaker calls to your liking, and you listen to him. But at the same time, like, I think it's also important for us to take our own personal time away from the webinars, away from the online presence, and just you and God, right? And one thing that I'm doing is that sometimes I like to discuss, like just me and my family. Either we read from like hadith from Sahih Muslim, we take a hadith and we read and we explain and we dive into like the explanations of it, or we read the Quran, but at the same time we focus on the meaning, the translation, which I like implore all of you guys to do. There's a great translation I can tell y'all. It's by Abdul Halim. Abdul Halim. It's on Amazon. I don't know how much it is, but it's not expensive. It's one of, honestly, the best translation I've ever read. It's like, sometimes we read Quran translations and then we see it's like incoherent, it's like choppy. It's like this old English, thou shall say whatever. But this Abdul Halim is legit, right? We just read it. It's like a story. You can read it, and you can read it cover to cover like a storybook, to be honest, and which is the Quran supposed to relate to us, which, the Abdul Halim translation really does for us. So I really think it's good. We have to take advantage of these opportunities and these resources online, but at the same time, we have to do our own, our own personal worship, and that's the more important one, because all the famous companions, all the good ones, they were known to God, or they were known for people that were doing more in private, more in public, and that's not an easy status to get to, and it's really hard. But if you get to that status, then there was a mubashir ashara, like your promised Jannah, basically. Allahu A'lam.
I think also like something very key is what Ifdal was talking about earlier. Like the best of deeds are those that they're consistent, even if they're like small. So I guess with kind of my daily routine, like I already have something that I'm used to like before Ramadan. So the question that came up was like, how can I upgrade it, even if it's a tiny bit? And then how can I keep it consistent? So for example, if you do your homework while listening to music, maybe like an upgrade for Ramadan would be like, while you're doing your homework, you could listen to like one nasheed or two nasheeds, and an even better upgrade would be like the nasheeds without musical instruments. Like who knows? So like if it's hard to like do your homework while only listening to nasheed, then maybe like every 5 songs it's 2 nasheeds. Every 5 songs it's 2 nasheeds, one tiny surah from Juz Amma. If like you do your homework while you listen to nasheed, even though it's like not the best situation, but maybe doing your homework while you listen to Quran, like ideally, like we should be listening to Quran with a present heart. But I can listen with a present heart for like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and then, but I still want to get the benefit, even if like it's not ideal. And inshallah, maybe if I'm consistent with the listening, then maybe my present heart and present mind will also upgrade as Ramadan goes on. If like I usually spend an hour at 3 p.m. Reading like reading a fiction book, like reading some kind of novel or reading a comic book, then maybe for Ramadan I can spend half that time reading a really interesting biography about one of the Sahaba, or about the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then the rest of the time I can do something fun and like possibly beneficial. Like asking that question, like how can I take what is normal to me, what I'm used to, how can I upgrade it, even if it's just a little bit, I think really helps inshallah to get us on that development that we want to during Ramadan.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think all the answers really encompass like having a more personal connection at this time, and then choosing from the very many resources we have, and then also just really cool applicable steps we can take into benefiting ourselves and moving forward towards Ramadan. I think I'll take one or two more questions if the panelists are okay with that, and then we'll go into some closing remarks. So one question I have in front of me right now is, Ustad Anas earlier said that we should hold grudges or bring up past mistakes others have made, and I was wondering what is the host's advice for asking forgiveness from friends and families, and how to approach mending a relationship that might have been broken prior to Ramadan, and then also in the event that the other person doesn't want to forgive you, what should you do? And I imagine this probably takes another twist, just given that we can't see a lot of people at this time. So yeah.
Allah, yeah, just having grudges, it's Ramadan itself really, it's a time for reflection, time to see like where we're at the moment, what weaknesses we have, what deficiencies we have, because we're, at the end of the day, we're human beings, but then with being human beings, we're given the opportunity to actually grow from that. We're given the opportunity to transform, to transcend even, to something that is close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is how it's interesting enough how like fasting itself, when we take a characteristic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, interestingly enough, as how Allah is the self-sustaining, He doesn't need food or drink, sustenance. We're leaving our food and sustenance in turn, controlling ourselves, right? Towards getting closer to Allah. In terms of, وَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ, right? To mend each other and whatnot. I feel like, if in communication, communication is key, right? I mean, like, just think about like what kind of relationship we have, for example, with our parents. Is it something where we're like open for talk, with conversation? I mean, because like, with looking at our communities, you have kind of like that language barrier, I guess, for some people, where it's tough to really speak to your parent or your siblings on that level. So I feel like you really have to open it up, and you have to take the initiative as well, rather than having that kind of conversation of like, oh, okay, where you only hear from your parents like, oh, okay, salat, right, just pray, or like, wake up and this and that. Try to build conversation. I feel like that's really key in terms of starting things up, and then you can open to go through many venues, because people, they're different, right? The way you approach people, they're totally different. You have to see like what it can go with in terms of communicating with them. I feel like that can be a start in terms. And then like if they won't forgive you after all of that, at the very least you have to make dua that may ask for repentance, right? And we ask Allah so that they may forgive you in that sense. Don't forget the dua aspect, right? Especially if you're fasting, because like fasting as well is one of the times where your duas are just accepted, right? Just being in that fasting state, right? So especially with that fasting state, keep them duas up and always keep those venues of communication open. So that's a lot of them.
Okay, unless Chief still has anything to add to that. Okay, cool. Alrighty, so I've had a few questions already, just asking about next week and if we plan to continue this, and I've been asked to share just a few flyers sort of deals. Oh, host has disabled screen sharing. Okay, never mind. I will not show that video. But there is a session next week with Dr. Khairuddin Al-Junaid of the National University of Singapore, and he will be discussing how to be an effective Muslim youth, inshallah. So that is Saturday, May 2nd, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. We will distribute the links and flyers similar to how we did for this one. There's also a video that I unfortunately can't share with you right now. But yeah, so look forward to that, inshallah, and any further events. And I believe we have closing remarks from IMSA's Learning and Development Center. If we're ready for that, I think it's on Rida. Oh, bisa. Waalaikumsalam.
Kelihatan?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Alright. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin. I'd like to thank all these panitia or whoever organized this event. This is very good. I like to thank the youth from IMSA and also people contributed to this event. We like to have this event, more of this event, inshallah, not only in this Ramadan, but also part of the outreach department. We have youth group basically that not only we will share knowledge and skills, it's also experience. So basically we have networking between the youth because you guys will be our replacement. So our generation will be replaced by you guys. So this is our goal basically to make sure we are all families here, especially in this country. We need to be like close to each other, maintain silaturahim, and then we help each other. If you have experience in like IT or you have experience in some healthcare or business or law, you can share with everybody. So we help each other, and if you have talents in tutoring, for example, you can tutor your younger brothers or sisters that help you need helps in their schoolwork or college studies. So we need to be able to maintain this relationship, strengthen the bond between us, and then everybody else will probably be like the best example, and they will also join our like groups together, like YMCA, even though it started with the young Christians, right? But now everybody else, even Muslims, join their activities. So that's our vision basically. We like you guys to have the lead on this, and especially the outreach. We have to have a strong faith in Islam as well as strong in non-faith, basically in our skills and our experience, share best practices. So that's basically what I want to say. So thank you guys for this, and inshallah next week there will be like Zahra said with Dr. Khairuddin, right, Professor Dean. So yeah, I'd like everybody to participate on that. Inshallah, he's very good speaker, and also we try to extend our network. He's from Singapore. I think you guys already know him from ICNA conference. So inshallah, we try our best to have this continue and consistent. From IMSA, we like to thanks again for everybody involved in this. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you again, Rida. Okay, so let's just close with our dua. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illallah astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayka. Thank you all again for attending. Thank you to our speakers. Inshallah, in a time where our typical idea of community gatherings, especially during Ramadan, is a little bit out of reach, we hope that this instilled some sort of sense of community with you today through our connections through Allah and Rasul, and can continue to do so in our future events, inshallah. All right, so alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan.
Salamatullah. Take care, y'all. Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan
Oh, where's Zahra?